Joining us now is Governor Chris Sununu, Republican of New Hampshire. Governor, thanks for being here.
You bet. This is great.
So everyone's wondering, when and where are you going to make an endorsement in the Republican presidential primary?
Well, you know, a couple things. I will make an endorsement. I can't even tell you who will be right now. There's a couple top contenders. I'm spending a lot of time with all the different candidates. And I've said this a lot, but I mean it sincerely. I'm trying to get all the candidates to be the best version of themselves in terms of, that political connection, that retail politics. I'm a big believer if you're good at the retail politics, you're going to be a good retail manager, right? Really bring a sense of the individual to the White House. I think there's still a huge opportunity to not have Trump as the nominee. And I'm not so much anti-Trump. I'm just pro-Republican Party. I know he can't win, so we just need to kind of a generational opportunity to move forward. Most voters won't even decide who they're voting for till after Thanksgiving.
You said your short list is down to a couple people?
Yeah.
So who are those people?
Pretty much those that are on the debate stage at this point, right? I mean, there's kind of a natural winnowing down of the process that I think the Republican Party nationally has done a good job with. We'll have 5 folks on the stage. I think the third debate is going to be very, very critical in terms of not just how well they do, but how well it's perceived. You know, where does that conversation go?
But these debates aren't breaking through, Governor. You know that because former President Trump isn't on the stage.
Well, I think I would argue that they are breaking through for candidates that do. I think Nikki Haley's done very well. I think Ron DeSantis has really held his own nationally in the second place position. Some candidates have kind of surged and faded a little bit. Some that were on the stage aren't on the stage. And I think the most powerful tool and what everybody has said for the last 6 months is as long as the party winnows itself down, which we are. I mean, I think there were 8 or 9 people on the stage in 16 and in 12 at this exact same time. So they're doing a good job winnowing it down. The third debate will be interesting because they're going to have almost twice as much airtime as they had before. Maybe in the first debate they had 10 minutes. They're all going to have 20 to 25 minutes. And they can't come with the same thing. So they have to be more engaging for a longer period of time, maybe go at each other a little more. And I think you're going to have an opportunity there where a couple, rise to the top.
How are you thinking through the timing of your endorsement? Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds, she just came out and endorsed Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. She's doing that in November. When are you going to do it, and how do you think about the timing in terms of impact and power?
Well, still a lot of time between now and Iowa or now in New Hampshire. And timing, I do believe, does matter. Like I said, I think a lot of folks, I guess my timing is when I figure out who I'm going to get behind, I'll let everybody know. I think I'll work hard to kind of spend a little more time with some of the other candidates and figure something out, shortly after Thanksgiving, something like that.
You want to do it before the new year? Yeah,
I think so because, you want to be impactful. I don't think endorsements really move the dial all that much. It really depends on the candidate, the endorser, how hard they work after it. Just saying, hey, I'm behind someone, that's not going to do much. But maybe if you get out and work for them and all that. Now, in Iowa and New Hampshire, the voters are very smart. They're very independent-minded. They'll consider your endorsement, but at the end of the day, they're going to make their own decision because we meet the candidates. We engage with them. We don't just have party bosses telling us what to think and do. We respect that decision. There's an old joke in New Hampshire where they might say, so you're going to vote for candidate X? And the person says, well, how do I know? I've only met them twice.
I know.
Right?
Or maybe 10 times
yeah,
in New
right.
Hampshire.
You got to engage.
But let's be real. You're not just a random person who would give an endorsement. You're a governor who's been elected multiple times as the support of the Republican Party in your state. Your brother's a former senator. Your father's a former governor, White House chief of staff. There's a so-called Sununu machine, politically speaking, in New Hampshire.
Is there a machine? I'd love to see the machine. No, look, I appreciate my
position. There are a lot of supporters out there. And would you put them behind your endorsement? Would it rev up the machine, shall we say?
I'm going to work hard for who I endorse. I'm going to get behind him because I not just hopefully believe in that candidate, but believe in the Republican Party, believe in the opportunity that we have as a party to move things forward. I've said for a while, and people thought I was crazy, but I think the numbers are bearing it out, Biden is not going to be the nominee. And the party that moves forward first with a new nominee other than Biden and Trump, because clearly America doesn't want that, the party that moves forward first and galvanizes their party around that kind of next generation candidate is the one that's going to have the best chance of winning in 24.
Does Governor Reynolds' endorsement of Governor DeSantis influence your decision? Because you've talked about how the field needs to shrink, so maybe you will work closely with the Iowa governor to pick the same person.
Yeah.
Do you think about that at all?
I'll say I love Kim Reynolds. I think she's an amazing governor of Iowa. She's going to do what she does. I'm going to do what I do. Might be the same candidate. It might not be. I don't know for sure. It doesn't really influence what I would do. I think I'm going to do whatever I think is best, whatever kind of connects with me as a voter, if you will, and then try to drive on that to make sure, again, we're galvanizing the party. It's the former president right now, Trump, in Iowa, New Hampshire, will hold maybe 42, 43% of the vote. That means there's at least 50, if not close to 60% of the base hardcore voter that's like, no, we're moving on. So if we can galvanize around that, it doesn't have to happen before Iowa, New Hampshire, but I think before Super Tuesday to make it Trump and one other, then you have a real race. Now, if Trump runs the table on Super Tuesday, it's probably over. But if another candidate, whoever it might be, can really give him a shot and win a couple of those states and show some political momentum into Super Tuesday and with some success, now you have a kind of a whole new race where the whole country's looking forward. They're going to be kind of keeping Biden on the side, as you saw the recent polls. Almost anybody can beat Biden right now. I mean, Trump, DeSantis, Haley, they all beat Biden in the swing states. Now, what it shows is Biden is not very well liked. The Democrat Party saw those numbers as much as anybody. It's only getting worse for Joe Biden, which tells me he's not going to be the nominee. I can't tell you how and when that's going to happen exactly, but sometime between now and the convention, things are going to move and the Democrats are going to move off. If we stick with Trump against a new nominee, Trump loses in that same poll. Trump loses against a non-Biden candidate, a candidacy on top of that ticket. Haley and DeSantis don't necessarily. So, again, the argument isn't about Trump as it is much about the Republican Party, galvanizing around something, give independents confidence that they're coming on board, give independents confidence that we're taking things in a kind of a generational step forward.
Former Ambassador Nikki Haley, she seems to expect that you're going to endorse her. She's talked publicly about how you seem to be quite friendly politically. Is it fair to say she's number one right now on your list?
No. Look, Nikki's a great friend. Ron's a friend. They're all friends.
You've heard what she said, though.
Oh, sure, but they all say the same. Chris Christie has said the same thing. Doug Berg, and they're all great friends. Tim Scott's done a great job on the campaign trail. So, no, Nikki, I think, was having fun the other day, kind of putting me on the spot. Where's the endorsement? I think they all know they're working hard, not just for the endorsement, but trying to earn the voters' confidence in New Hampshire. We're all friends. We're all tight. I think they would all make great presidents. I really do. I'll narrow it down and get behind one in the next few weeks.
Does New Hampshire even matter, though? If former President Trump wins by a big margin, who cares who comes in second place?
Oh, no, absolutely. So let's say you have another candidate that gets 3 second-place finishes in Iowa, New Hampshire, and South Carolina. Well, now there's going to be a lot of pressure on anyone else to get out of the race. So it's more of a filtering process. You don't have to win the state, but you have to do well enough to kind of be part of, to make the claim that clearly I'm the alternative to Trump.
That's
and now everyone gets
playing
behind
for second place. What kind of political strategy is that? I mean, at the end of
when
the
you're running against a former president.
Well, can anyone beat him, in your view?
Of course.
In the Republican Party?
Of course. Look, if he can't even get more than 50% of the support in those 3 states, he's very vulnerable. I mean, a former president, head of the party, you're not even getting 50% of the vote of your own base party? No, those are actually pretty bad numbers. So it's just about winning it down and having all these other Republicans, I think, appreciate, hey, we're moving forward. Now, to former President Trump's credit, if you will, he gets talked about 100 times a night between 8 p.m. and 11 p.m., right? He gets all the
he has 5 looming trials.
That's it. And
some of them active.
And he's been able to really parlay that into all of a sudden he's gone from the fighter to the victim, right? And that galvanizes his base. It gets people excited. And he's probably going to have a very solid 35% base. That's always going to stick with him. But that ain't 50%. And last time I checked, you got to get 50% of the votes to win a primary. So that just means it's not easy. I think he's still the potential likely candidate. He still has the best chance today.
Would you back him if he was nominee?
Oh, look, I fully expect I'm going to get behind the Republican Party, but understand, I want a winner. If people ask me all the time, what's the issue of 24 for the Republican Party? It's not the economy. It's not jobs. It's not abortion. It's not any of that. It's winning. Winning has to be our issue. Mathematically, he cannot win in November of 24. It's not going to be Biden on that ticket. All the data shows that. His physical health, his mental health, all that comes into play.
Well, President Biden's showing no signs of moving away from running.
Oh, no, he would never do that. He shouldn't do that necessarily.
They even got rid of the New Hampshire primary for the Democrats because he's in charge of the party.
To his peril, right? To his peril. So that's allowing a huge door to open up in terms of having a conversation. The polls aren't very good for him nationally. look at where he is today, both in poll numbers and health and all of that. Imagine where he's going to be 8 months from now. By then, either whether it's the Bidens or the party or something is going to come into play where folks know, well, if we keep going down this path, we lose. They're not going to let that happen. So the party that moves first in terms of showing America a new face, a new opportunity, a new generation of leadership, that's the party that's going to be able to win this thing in 24.
So all these candidates you've mentioned on the Republican side keep making their appeals to you, to New Hampshire voters, but they're being quite delicate when it comes to Trump. They're not talking about what I was just in New York covering, his ongoing civil fraud trial. They're not talking about January 6th investigation by the special counsel Jack Smith. Yeah. Why won't they touch those issues for the most part?
For the most part, that isn't what is moving a Republican voter right now. I think the polls and some of the data, some of the messaging data that comes out shows that even the non-Trump voter aren't really swayed with that stuff.
But aren't those issues tied to electability, with Trump's electability? Should he be convicted
only
down
in November,
the line?
not electability in the primary. Right? So right now they're only focusing on the primary. It definitely affects his electability in a general, but not in the primary.
Well, what affects his electability in a primary? Because Governor DeSantis and others have come at him from the right, and it hasn't really worked.
Look, I think the argument you make against former President Trump is, he talks a good game about being a conservative. He's clearly not. Right? He's the most unfiscally disciplined Republican that has ever been in the White House. He said he was going to drain the swamp. He didn't do it. We wanted border security. Great idea. But he couldn't achieve on the policies. And what you have today is, as a governor, I'm partial to governors or former governors, folks that actually understand the accountability of that office and understanding that policy is easy, funding is easy. It's really about how do you get the policy to strategize a path to make it something operational for you and your family and your kids. We talk a good game about what should happen in schools, but how is the policy actually going to work for my family? How's it going to open a door of opportunity for my family in my town? Governors know how to do that. Governors can translate that. So I think that's a lot of the arguments that are really being made out there. It isn't just, and the fact that he can't win, and we just have to win. The January 6th stuff, for whatever reason, doesn't play in the Republican base right now. The election denial stuff doesn't play. A lot of folks still believe that the election was stolen one way or the other. My argument is, if you believe the election was stolen from Trump when he was a sitting president, well, then they're certainly going to do it again to him in November, and he loses. Or if you believe that he lost legitimately in 2020, well, then he can't then he's not going to win in 24, so he loses. So there's 100 ways this plays out where Trump can't win. You have the RFK. If RFK Jr. gets on that
Dr. Cornel West is running as an independent as well.
That's right, but RFK is very dynamic in that, not that he can win, I don't think he can win at all, but he's going to pull way more Trump voters to him than non-Trump voters. Trump claims that he handled the pandemic just fine, no problems. But there's a lot of anti-vaxxers and conservatives, of kind of the free staters as we look at them, conservative base that say, no, you didn't handle it. You didn't get rid of Fauci. You tell everyone that everything was fine when it wasn't. You gave us a bunch of bull on the pandemic, and they're going to go to someone like RFK, again, hurting our ability to win. The last big piece in a place like New Hampshire is he hurts us down ballot. I have folks that have lost school board seats and up to congressional seats because they had to kind of be branded by that extremism as opposed to just being able to talk to voters on their issues. So it's a negative brand. Why do we live in the past when we have the opportunity to galvanize for the future?
Has he tried to call you at all, former President Trump?
Not lately. Not lately, no.
What was your last conversation with him?
Probably about a year ago, just over a year ago. I was working to try to get him to endorse one of our candidates for the U.S. Senate race, which he said he was going to do, and then he chickened out. He ended up never endorsing in our U.S. Senate race. I think it cost a good candidate the primary, and ultimately, we lost the U.S. Senate seat because he said he was going to do something and chickened out at the last minute. It was all about him and his image and all that sort of thing. So, no, I think that was probably the last conversation we had.
What do you do if he's the nominee? Do you kind of just stay home in New Hampshire and watch TV, or do you get out there and campaign for him if he's the nominee?
No, it's not so much about him. In New Hampshire, I want my candidates to win. I'm not going to run again, so I want the next governor to be a Republican. I want the CD1 seat, which should be a Republican seat. Bring that back into Republican hands, the school board seats, the town selectmen seats, all those things that really connect with folks in New Hampshire. I'll be out pounding the pavement for the Republicans one way or the other.
You've been speaking a lot about governors, fellow governors. One governor who's getting a lot of attention this week is Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin. There are the off-year elections in Virginia on Tuesday night. If Republicans do well, and Youngkin is seen as having a big night because his Republican allies do well in the legislative races, Do you believe there will be a push to get Youngkin to run for the Republican presidential
In
nomination?
24?
Yes.
No.
I don't think that door is closed.
I think Glenn's awesome. I think Glenn Youngkin is one of the best governors. I think he'd make a phenomenal president. Do not misunderstand me at all. But because you have to actually get on the ballot in some of these early states, that door has closed. We're trying to winnow the field down, not add to the field. So I'm not saying it's impossible.
Have you heard talk about that behind the scenes?
Oh, sure. Oh, no, a lot of folks have been talking. Not so much lately. I think we were talking about it over the summer. Was there time there for Glenn, maybe a Brian Kemp, great governor of Georgia?
Do you ever encourage Governor Kemp or Governor Youngkin to think about it?
Not so much for 24, only in that I understand there's just structural dynamics that are in the way. They would both be incredible presidents. I mean, I really mean that sincerely. And maybe they know something I don't, but I don't know how you get on the ballot, galvanize a strategy without potentially diluting the field more. It's not impossible, but that would be a risk. I'd say there's a lot of opportunity to see what happens in this race and maybe play if they wanted to run for president in 28. Glenn's done a phenomenal job. I mean, there's a governor that has, I don't want to say walked the line, but really with leadership shown both sides of the party, both extreme, whether it's the extremes or more moderates, fiscal conservatives, social whatever it is, shown them a path to success and gotten the.
Well, we'll
the
see what happens in
it.
Virginia.
Yeah, I think he's going to be successful.
He has his position on abortion, the 15-week position that he believes is a winner, but we'll see how it plays in a state President Biden won in 2020.
Yeah, I mean, he came out of nowhere, really shocked people with a big win. He's just been a good governor. It's one thing if you shock people with a win, but then you're sitting on your laurels. Glenn Youngkin hasn't. He's worked incredibly hard to get stuff done, to really galvanize the party. And if anything Glenn has shown, it's the galvanizing the party gets independents on board. If you're fractured as a party, independents might agree with you philosophically, but they won't necessarily come and vote because they feel like they almost have to pick a side of the party they're going to join for the election. So you got to be galvanized. You got to understand that you might disagree on 20% over here, but let's put that to the side. Let's focus on the 80%. Inspire people with the galvanization and the confidence of the party, and then the independents come on board. And if you're winning independents, you're winning the election.
Governor, you keep saying in our conversation that former President Trump can't win. He just can't win in 2024. That's your conclusion. If no one starts to get traction in the next 5 to 6 months, what is your wing of the Republican Party, those who are skeptical about Trump, going to do if no one can bounce out of New Hampshire or bounce out of South Carolina and start to really compete for the nomination?
Yeah. Look, like I said, if you get to Super Tuesday and Trump's still running the table, it's going to be very hard. And ultimately, I mean, what Biden has done to this country, the nonsense of Bidenomics, that's going to, I think, get a lot of folks to stick with Trump, whether they agree with him or not. I think the Democrat Party will still move away from Biden, and now we're dealing with a whole nother new, I don't want to say beast, that's too negative a word, but an individual that we haven't been able to campaign against. We're focused on Biden. Democrats move on. Now we're really in trouble. So people won't walk away from the Republican Party. I don't believe that at all, regardless of who the nominee is. But we're going to fight hard to get the best nominee we can to galvanize the whole country behind us, not just our party, but the whole country behind the opportunity to moving off of these social progressive policies that have just failed across the board.
Would you be willing to be vetted for vice president next year?
No, I'm not looking. Look, I visit Washington, but I love going back home. I'm not looking. I'm kind of getting out of the political thing. I just want to, again, really help the Republican Party, but nothing I'm looking at.
I've gone back and read articles about, I've known your father for years, John H. Sununu, and in 1987, his endorsement of George H.W. Bush, when you look back at that news coverage, how old were you in 1987?
13, 14 years old, yeah.
You probably remember,
Yeah.
I mean, it was a
remember it very
seismic
well.
political moment.
Sure.
It was national news.
Huge.
And big,
Came out of nowhere.
and Bush was struggling at the time. People forget, even though he was the sitting vice president.
He got his clock cleaned in Iowa. There was a lot of sour faces on that ride home. I remember hearing the stories about that. My dad said, don't worry about it. We got this thing. And because he wasn't just about an endorsement, it was about understanding the voters, the electorate, getting behind, working hard, knowing where to go, knowing what the key points that the voters wanted to hear about, and allowing the voters to ask the questions, allowing the voters to feel like they're part of that process. That's what you need to see in New Hampshire. I think in Iowa too. Iowa has a caucus. It's a bit of a different funky situation. But in a primary with such high voter turnout in New Hampshire, anything's possible. And as an independent, you can come and vote in the primary. So think about that. Independents will not be participating in a Democrat primary this year. If you're an independent, you want to vote, you're going to come over to the Republicans and pick the best alternative. Very few of them are going to go with Trump, right? He just has this base voter. He's not going to galvanize independents. So depending on the emphasis that those independents put on this campaign, and I think it's going to be pretty big by January 23rd comes around, huge opportunity there for a huge voting bloc and a voting base for one of these other candidates to grab onto.
And when you read your father's comments back in '87, it's so interesting. Bush was struggling, and he really came out and defended Bush as a political candidate and said, this guy is strong, this guy can be our nominee. Are you going to be out there for whomever you endorse? Because there's a lot of skepticism among voters about Governor DeSantis, about Ambassador Haley, about former Governor Christie. Will you be out there
100%.
Really pushing them, not just for a day, but day after day?
Oh yeah, that's the fun part. No, and I'm really quite passionate about that. When I get behind someone, I'm going to get behind it 100% and give it everything I got. Now, it's a long time since 1987. How people read newspapers, I'll explain what a newspaper is to the younger generation in a minute. How people consume data, information, and news is all very, very different. You have to appreciate that, which is why I think being on the ground and working hard on the ground can have such an impact, because it's traditionally not done as well and as much nationally. But in New Hampshire, it's still not just cherished, but demanded.
Congressman Dean Phillips of Minnesota, I just interviewed him last week, now running against President Biden in the New Hampshire primary. If he wins New Hampshire, he won't get delegates per the Democratic Party's rules, but he would get attention.
Oh, yeah.
What have you noticed about Dean Phillips so far?
Look, he's getting out there. He's doing the work. He's getting a lot of people on the Democrat side looking. And now, all of a sudden, you have these polls out that say Biden is going to lose. Biden can't beat anybody.
But can Dean Phillips win New Hampshire?
He could. There's still time to do it. It's not easy. I'm not going to say it's an easy road for him, but he could. He got in kind of late. I'm surprised he didn't get in the summer. I'm not sure why that was. So the fact that he got in pretty darn late here doesn't mean it's impossible, but it's hard. But with very little money and very little name ID, we're now on CBS talking about Dean Phillips. I mean, nobody would have thought that a month ago. So imagine where we'll be a month from now, or even 6 weeks, 2 months from now. He could have a lot of momentum at his back. The delegates don't really matter out of New Hampshire. It's the fact that you can get the attention, you can get people excited and interested, and when things are going so badly for the current president, that's just a huge door for any candidate who wants to come in and take the nomination.
The final few things here. On Tuesday, many elections across the country, Mississippi, Kentucky, New Jersey has some elections, Pennsylvania has some local elections, of course everything in Virginia, the big showdown in that Commonwealth. What are you watching in the off-year elections Tuesday night?
Virginia and Kentucky are the big ones. I think Tate Reeves is a great governor of Mississippi. He's going to do well down in Mississippi. I think Daniel Cameron has a huge shot to come out of nowhere, really, and be the next governor of Kentucky. We'll see where that goes. And Youngkin. I mean, what Glenn has done to galvanize folks, if he's able to show not just a record of success, but a record of political galvanization, wins, positivity, inspiration for what has typically been a blue state for the last 10 years, that's a huge opportunity for him to build on. I don't know if there's time for him to do it in 24 if he wanted to do that, but a huge opportunity and a huge record of success that he'd be able to carry into future opportunities for himself and get Republicans excited again. Look, we should have won big in 22. We got our clocks cleaned. As a Republican, I'm upset that I don't have 54 U.S. senators. I was told that was going to happen, or 4 or 5 more.
Well, they wanted you to run.
They did. And again, at the end of the day, unfortunately, the Senate, I think the U.S. Senate's become kind of like the B team. I mean, it really has. Governors get stuff done. Governors are 24/7. Have the Senate done anything this week, or we have a government shutdown? I don't know.
I'm not sure Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell would agree with your
I'm sure he
assessment.
doesn't, but hey, look at the results. And that's why I get frustrated nationally. So huge opportunity there that we didn't capitalize on. We should have won governorships in Pennsylvania or Arizona, but the Trump extreme type candidate, message, and brand all got their clocks cleaned. So that's why I get nervous about the future. If we lost seats in 20, we lost seats in 22, why would we think the same type of brand and message is going to win in 24? It won't. The math doesn't play out. And, I don't want to, I'm just tired of losing, man. I want to win. I'm a Republican that feels optimistic and hopeful we can galvanize this country together, but it doesn't happen because we're reliving in the past. It happens because we get behind a new candidate, a new opportunity. Isn't that what America's about? In America, we don't go backwards. We have the 2.0, the next generation, the next big idea, the next candidate, the next face, whatever it is. It's all about the opportunity of tomorrow, not relitigating the past. I just think Republicans have an opportunity to galvanize on that DNA of the American spirit and bring a big win home in November.
Final thing. Wednesday night in Miami, another Republican debate. Former President Trump will not be on the stage. Some others won't be on the stage, like Governor Doug Burgum. Former Governor Asa Hutchinson. Is it time for Hutchinson and Burgum to leave the race if they're not making the debate stage?
if you're not on the debate stage, I don't see the path. I really, and they're great. They're two of my best friends, frankly, and they've worked hard. They've been great candidates on the ground. But if you're not making the national debate stage, it's hard to find the path at this point. So those are kind of hard conversations to have. But it's winnowed down. I think the 4 or 5 candidates that are going to be on that stage are going to bring some excitement and dynamicism to the opportunity of saying, hey, look, there's a future here. There's an alternative here. There's a path to winning here, and hopefully they capture that moment. And I think they will. I think it'll be pretty exciting. I mean, the first debate, had maybe 10 or 11 minutes of airtime, tops. This debate will have 20, 25 minutes for each of them. So they got to bring something a little different. They're probably going to be a little chippy, right, as I like to say, going at each other a little bit, which is a good thing. And it will show kind of the opportunity of who's the fighter, right? Who's got the experience in the background, willing to fight, and gives folks a sense of confidence that not only are they going to fight on a primary debate stage, but be able to carry this all the way to November.
New Hampshire's Republican Governor Chris Sununu, thanks for being here.
Thank you, man. This was great. Appreciate it.
Thank you.